My name is June Apuhin. I'm a registered social worker and a registered nurse as well. My husband is an internet engineer and we are blessed with 5 lovely children, 3 girls and 2 boys. 2 of our daughters have studied in St. Paul and hopefully another one will transfer to St. Paul next school year. I graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Social Work from the University of Negros Occidental Recoletos, Bacolod City. Took the board exams after a year of self-review and luckily passed. Although I highly encourage you to enroll in a formal review class or review center. I tried working on my master's degree in social work at the University of the Philippines, Diliman, but unfortunately, after a year in masteral, my husband's work was relocated to another country, so we had to move. We stayed in Hong Kong for about 7 years and I worked as an assistant teacher in an international school there. We came back to the Philippines in the year 2011 and I finally went back to my job as a social worker. So, I've been a social worker for more than 15 years now. My field experiences involved working with children in especially difficult circumstances. So the abused children, the physically, verbally, mentally, and victims of rape, sexually exploited and prostituted girls, orphaned, abandoned, and neglected children, and the street children. I also work with marginalized and abused women, the poorest of the poor families in the urban areas of Metro Manila, and the communities that were affected by calamities and disasters. I only had a little experience as a social worker in a hospital setting. Of all this, I've been mostly exposed to working with sexually abused. Even up to now, I'm a volunteer social worker consultant in a foundation that is catering to children who are victims of rape. In a normal time, I'm supposed to speak with you in person and talk about this social work career, give you some tips in your college preparation if you ever decide to take a Bachelor of Science in Social Work, tell you a brief background of the field, its objectives and goals, the existing laws or provisions related to the profession, the challenges of working as a social worker, etc. But since this is pandemic time, an extraordinary time, I hope this recording can still help you in realizing the course you want to track. In this video, I will be sharing with you my social work journey and hopefully inspire you to become future everyday heroes, the social workers. I have quite a silly and unexpected dramatic experience in terms of my college preparations and how I ended up in this field. I have never imagined, not even in my wildest imaginations, that I would become a social worker. Because ever since I was a little girl, I dreamt of becoming a newscaster. I would sometimes envision myself doing news reports while speaking in front of the mirror using my brush as the microphone. Growing up in a Visayan culture and dialect, I had to practice more on my diction and pronunciation. As they jokingly say, pag Bisaya matigas ang dila. I know some Visayan speaker might disagree with me, but then my personal experience in public speaking often led me to tigas dila episodes or sometimes worse, as I had experienced several times having my tongue tied. Nonetheless, it didn't stop me from dreaming of becoming a news anchor someday. In fact, I enjoyed playing tongue twister games with my friends and even enrolled in speech and theater arts class during summertime. I also engaged in oration and declamation contests in school just to boost my confidence in speaking in front of many people as part of my preparation for becoming what I want to be. Obviously, I planned on taking a Bachelor of Arts in Mass Communication. However, the college enrollment day has led me to a major turnabout in the career path that I had been planning for a long time. I was so shocked by the long queue and the number of students who wanted to take AB Masscom. If there's one thing I hated most, it's actually waiting in line. Be it in a bank, in a grocery, or other shops, I would rather postpone my transactions and maybe just come back when the line is not that long. I cannot bear standing in long lines. I guess the only time I remembered I was patient in long queue was when I accompanied my daughter in watching the 2015 One Direction concert. But that's it. After that, no more going out to concerts. Well, at least for me, because I still allow my daughter to go to concerts with her trusted friends from St. Paul, of course. So, because of my lack of patience at that time, I decided to go to the next line where there were only 9 students queuing up. I then asked the girl in front of me, "For what course is this line again?" With a kind but puzzled look, she answered, "This is the line for Bachelor of Science in Social Work." Now, to be honest, I don't have much of an idea about that course since popular during my time were the fields of education, engineering, the civil, electrical, mechanical, industrial, electronics and communications, and also commerce, accountancy, computer science, programming, banking and finance, and the medical fields like nursing, medical technology, and also political science and mass communication. But it sounded so shallow to me, and the people in the line seemed friendly, so I kind of enrolled myself in the course. But with a frame of mind that I will just shift to Masscom in the next semester. To my surprise, the course subjects were quite interesting. Studying human behavior and social environment and the different theories have actually piqued my interest in the field. The social work core values presented, which were service, social justice, dignity and worth of the person, importance of human relationships, integrity and competence, have also motivated me to consider the course. These values are indeed the heart and soul of the work of social work. Now, aside from getting along well with my amazing batchmates, I get to have astounding mentors, our professors, who were all very modest people. Learning from their examples and seeing them simply living out the social work principles has inspired me to aspire to becoming a better person. These principles, acceptance, individualization, confidentiality, purposeful expression of feelings, self-determination, non-judgmental attitude, and controlled emotional involvement have resonated with me and helped hone my relationship with others and eventually molded my character. One of my mentors encouraged me to participate and be active in an outreach organization. So, I joined the Arts and Sciences College Extension Program, or the ASEP, at our university. As a community volunteer for the said program, I started going to the adopted urban poor barangay of our school during weekends. Every time I visit the area to do a little teaching or advocacy about children's rights, the kids' smiling faces were always registered in my mind. I remember gathering them near the manual water pump, or we call it poso, and advised them to wash their faces and their feet before we would start our session. It became a habit of washing the kids whenever I visit the community, and every time my heart felt something special just by doing those little things for the children. I guess that moment was the turning point when I began realizing the thing that I was most passionate about. I wanted to make a difference and touch people's lives, especially children. The course gave me the opportunity to do so. I then explored going to different children's homes or shelters during my free time, and more I was convinced I was undoubtedly in the right place. Consequently, before I had the chance to shift to Mascom, which was my original plan, I already fell in love with social work. Now, you may not have a similar experience in choosing a career as I did. So, I certainly urge you as early as now to educate yourselves on the career that you will be signing for. These are some of the significant tips which I believe you have to seriously consider. First, you need to discern about what you value the most and think about the thing that you are most passionate and what you love doing. Second, after discerning, you have to pray about it and see if the values of the profession match your own. Third, you need to do a lot of research or try to gather information about the course that you are interested in pursuing. And lastly, it's important to have a mentor who inspires you, be it online or someone you personally know, who can give you more background about the course and can answer some of the questions that you need to know about the profession. In a social work degree, you will invest a lot of time, effort, and money. So please get to know the reality of the profession before committing yourself to it. The skills needed in the profession are communication, empathy, active listening, critical thinking, social skills, time management or energy management, and emotional intelligence. But I tell you, all these skills can be learned by heart along the way when you are really committed to becoming a social worker. So what is social work? The common misconception of social work, or the uninformed people in our society, associates social work as dole out or an act of altruism, which is the giving of material aid to those who are in need out of sense of kindness. Because of this misunderstanding, many charity workers, philanthropists, and other people who are giving out donations are often called social workers. It is true that the social work profession traces its roots to the humanitarian acts of people who were moved by the material deprivation of their fellow human beings. However, it has already evolved into a discipline that requires specific competencies in order to be of real help to people and ultimately to be able to contribute to nation building. Social work is an essential discipline that uses research, policy, organization, intervention, education, and direct practice to improve the lives of individuals, groups, and communities. Social work is basically a helping profession, but it is also an academic discipline and practice-based profession. The ultimate goal of social work is to enhance the well-being and level of functioning for all people and to create positive social change by improving social conditions and creating more humane practices and policies for vulnerable populations. In short, social work aims to enhance the individual's social functioning. Well, in my 4 years of bachelor's degree plus my few semesters in the master's, the word social functioning was never absent. It's like a mantra for all social workers, along with social justice and social change. For me, I guess you cannot call yourself a social worker if you do not fully understand the concept of social functioning and what it really means, since it is the common base for social work practice. Social functioning is defined as the ability of an individual to perform their social roles within their own self, their immediate social environment, and the society at large. Apparently, every person has several roles to perform in their day-to-day life. Like me, for instance, my roles are as a mother to my 5 children, as a wife to my one and only husband, as a sister to my 3 siblings, as a daughter to my parents, as a social worker to my clients, as a friend, as a volunteer in an NGO, as a leader in a Christian community, and as a citizen in this country. What is a social worker? A social worker, as defined in the Republic Act 4373, is a practitioner who, by accepted academic training and social work professional experience, possesses the skill to achieve the objectives as defined and set by the social work profession through the use of basic methods and techniques of social work, which are the casework, group work, and community organization, which are designed to enable individuals, groups, and communities to meet their needs and to solve the problems of adjustment to a hanging pattern of society and through coordinated action to improve economic and social conditions, and is connected with an organized social work agency which is supported partially or wholly from the government or community solicited funds. Quite a long definition, so let's make it simpler. Social workers are professionals, meaning they are educated and trained to help meet the basic and complex needs of communities and people. Social workers work with many different populations and types of people, particularly focusing on those who are vulnerable, oppressed, marginalized, and living in poverty. The types of populations social workers work with are children and adolescents, couple and families, poor communities from urban and rural, elderly, victims of trauma and domestic violence, the youth offenders, the LGBTQ community, refugees, immigrants, indigenous people, individuals with disabilities, people with mental health concerns or addictions, medical patients, and a lot more actually, but this short list is just to give you an idea. What do social workers do? A social worker performs a great diversity of tasks to help people who are struggling with some aspect of their lives. On a daily basis, social workers stand up for human rights and justice and give voice to unheard and marginalized populations. Social workers help people solve and cope with problems in their everyday lives. They also help reunify families. Social workers protect vulnerable children and support families in need of assistance. They contribute to bettering individuals' lives, and by doing so, they improve society as a whole. Social work is really about helping people help themselves using the helping skills. My first job as a social worker was in one of the Municipal Social Welfare and Development Office in Mindanao, where I was assigned in a rural community. I actually just went to Mindanao for a vacation and stayed in my auntie's house, but I ended up having a job there. I was tasked to do an assessment for families who needed assistance, so I was doing home visitation and interviews. It was quite a challenge because aside from working with the Muslim community for the first time, the transportation going to the area was a bit hard. Each time I need to do home visits and locate the clients, I had to commute in what they called habal-habal. It's like a big bike, public transport, something. And the place which I usually had to go were not only in the mountains, but rather distant from where I live. My consolation, though, was that the people in that Muslim community were warm and accommodating. They were very helpful, especially when I had to ask for directions to my client's house. Although my stay in that work was brief, because my father was petrified when he learned about my job, I had to say it was very memorable. I went back to Bacolod after Mindanao and worked in the city government under the office of the city mayor. My mentor also asked me to be her substitute teacher in our course, the Introduction to Social Work. So, I also did part-time teaching. I did it for a semester only since I was so young at that time and I felt I needed more challenge. Not that teaching isn't challenging, but I guess I want more adventure. Office work bored me as well. So, my mentor contacted her colleague in Manila, who was a director of an NGO, and requested to give me the challenge I need. I was given a street educator job. My areas were the streets of Recto, Avenida, and Quiapo. Now there's the challenge I have been looking for. Gathering the street children in those areas was not an easy task. Most of them were hardcore. Good thing, my work partner has already created a good relationship with them, so it wasn't that difficult for me to come in. Once again, I find joy in being with the children and teaching them basic health hygiene, their rights, issues about HIV, and the like, because apparently some of them were victims of pedophiles. After short sessions with them, my partner and I would treat them for a meal at Jollibee, McDonald's, or any near food chains or restaurants. It was in one of those meals with them when I learned why they sniffed rugby. Accordingly, since they can't afford to have a complete meal every day, sniffing rugby won't make them feel hungry. It's heartbreaking knowing a lot of children starving when many privileged are just taking for granted the food being served on their tables, and some are even throwing them. I remember on one occasion, the children and I were on our way to eat when the guard blocked the entrance door and was hesitant to allow the kids to enter. I had to step in, showed my license, and told him I will pay for the meal of these children. I could feel that time the children were so proud marching in with social workers on their side, protecting their rights, and giving them the opportunity to be able to sit down in a decent restaurant. After being a street educator, I was assigned to a depressed community in Manila. This time as a CO worker or a community organizer. As much as I enjoyed working in the streets, community work was fairly a thrill. I still get to work with the children, plus the perks of being able to help the whole family. Whenever I do home or community visits, I would pass by in an area where the tambays, mostly the youth who are hanging out in the corner, and play a little bit of chess with them. I was a varsity player in college, so that was a bit of an advantage in building rapport with those youth. After playing, some of them would accompany me to the house where I would visit. Another advantage was my ability to speak both Cebuano and Ilonggo. I noticed a lot of people living in depressed areas were not really pure Tagalog speaking. Some of them were coming from Visayas and Mindanao, while others were from Bicol and northern parts of Luzon. Hence, the interviews and assessment became easier when I talked to people coming from Visayas and Mindanao because I speak in their native dialect or language. So from community work, I moved to a residential setting where I was tasked as the center case manager for sexually abused and exploited children. The adventure just never stopped. I got to attend court hearings from different cities of Metro Manila and sometimes even outside Manila. I was also able to travel to different provinces to reunite children that were long separated from their families. And I was able to establish and widen my network with different agencies catering to abused children. I could go on and on with my experience in different settings, as mentioned earlier, that I have been in this field for more than 15 years. But maybe if you want to know more about social work, I challenge you to do the number 4 tip I shared a while ago, which is to research about the profession. Also, maybe after this, I might upload in the YouTube stuff about social work, and there in the comments section, you may post your questions. Now let's go to social work services. Social work is a vast and broad field. It is so wide-ranging that it is needed everywhere, be it local or international, in various settings such as schools, communities, courts, jails, hospitals, mental health clinics, corporate office, residential shelters such as domestic violence shelters, senior centers, home for orphaned and abandoned children, shelter for sexually abused and prostituted women and children, and also in advocacy organizations and in public and private agencies like humanitarian NGOs and many more. Every social worker works with a different population on a different issue or at a different level, so different interventions are provided. Social workers are employed by government and non-government organizations. The exact duties of a social worker depend on specific positions. But more importantly, social workers help individuals understand and locate available social services. For instance, the DSWD, or the Department of Social Welfare and Development, has numerous programs and services which are, for example, we have the 4Ps, or the Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino program. It's a conditional cash transfer. It is a human development program that invests in the health and education for poor families, primarily those with children aged 0 to 18 years old. There's also Kalahi Seeds, NCDDP, or the Kapit Bisig Laban sa Kahirapan. It's a comprehensive and integrated delivery of social services, national community-driven development program. It is a community-driven program of the Philippine government implemented through the DSWD, supplemented by the government of the Philippines. There's also the SLP program, or the Sustainable Livelihood Program. It is a community-based capacity building effort that seeks to improve the program participants' socioeconomic status through 2 tracks, like the microenterprise development and the employment facilitation. There's also Listahan. It's an information management system that identifies who and where the poor are in the country. It is being operated by the National Household Targeting System for poverty reduction. Another services is the supplemental feeding program, the provision of food in addition to the regular meals to target children as part of the DSWD's ECCD program of the government. Disaster response operations, the life-saving emergency relief and long-term response. We also have the RRPTP, the Recovery and Reintegration Program for Trafficking Persons. It is a comprehensive package of programs and services enhancing the psychosocial and economic needs of the beneficiaries. There's also PAMANA, the Payapa at Masaganang Pamayanan. It aims to improve access of poor communities to basic social services and promote responsive governance. The Protective Services Program provides a range of interventions to individuals, families, and communities in crisis or difficult situations and vulnerable or disaster-affected communities. There's also ISWSFN, the International Social Welfare Services for Filipino Nationals. It is a program for migrant Filipinos and other overseas Filipino nationals who are in crisis situation and in need of special protection are encouraged to seek assistance in the Philippine embassies in their countries of destination. Another services are the residential and non-residential facilities. It's services rendered in facilities 24-hour that provide alternative family care arrangement to poor, vulnerable, and disadvantaged individuals or families in crisis. There's adoption and foster care. The act of adoption, of permanently placing a minor with a parent or parents other than the birth parents in the Philippines. The gender and development. The GAD as a perspective recognizes that gender concerns cut across all areas of development and therefore gender must influence government when it plans, budget for, implements, monitors, and evaluates policies, programs, and projects for development. There's also BUB. It's pilot tested in 2013 and now in its third cycle. It's bottom-up budgeting. It is a process that is proposed to ensure implementation of priority poverty reduction projects. Private organizations or non-government agencies also have similar or sometimes different services from the DSWD. They offer services such as environmental, social, education program, advocacy, and human rights work. There are also many residential care facilities run by non-governmental organizations. NGOs play a critical part in developing society, improving communities, and promoting citizen participation. They can work to promote social or political change on a broad scale or very locally. And I believe in this pandemic time, DSWD and NGOs are providing services for affected with COVID-19. The existing laws or provisions related to the field. Republic Act number 4373 is an act to regulate the practice of social work and the operation of social work agencies in the Philippines and for other purposes. This act, promulgated in 1965, gave social work formal recognition as a profession. However, RA 4373 was amended by Republic Act number 5175, which was passed in 1967. Significant features of the amendment include the protection of the rights of social workers holding provisional appointment for the past 5 years at the time of the passage of the law. Also, the qualification of master's degree holders in social work for board examinations. With such amendment, graduates from other four-year courses aside from BSSW can proceed to master's degree in social work and take up the board examinations upon graduation. The Republic Act number 10847 is the second law that amended RA 4373. This act lowers the minimum age of social workers to be able to get a license from 21 to 18 years and provides for the 45 units of CPD and the integration of all registered social workers into an AIPO or the Accredited Integrated Professional Organization. The Republic Act 9433, an act providing for a Magna Carta for social workers. The state shall promote and improve the social and economic well-being of public social workers, their living conditions and working conditions, and the terms of employment. Each shall develop their skills and capabilities to make them more responsive to the needs and problems of their clients and better equipped in delivering social services and programs. The Republic Acts I just mentioned to you are the laws for social work. There are also many laws and provisions related to social work practice. Already quite a lot, and there are still more. But please don't get overwhelmed because you don't have to memorize all of them. Well, unless you want to proceed to law school. What's important is that you are familiar and that these laws exist. So why is law important in social work practice? The law also ensures that there is legal accountability and that the social workers are meeting relevant standards of practice and working in a lawful, safe, and effective way. The first great challenge I ever encountered was when I was having a group therapy session with sexually abused girls. As they were sharing about the abuses that happened to them, one girl raised her hand and innocently asked, "You said God is always protecting us, that He is powerful and can make anything happen. Then why was I raped? Why did He let this thing happen to me? Why didn't He protect me? And why me when I did not do anything bad?" So many whys that left me speechless for a while. I was trying to figure out how to explain to them in a way that they can understand. But all I could say that time was, all good things are God's work. The bad things, on the other hand, are works of the devil. God was also crying when that happened to you. I wasn't sure if I answered her questions, but seeing her calm down while being comforted by the group gave me a relief. I have also encountered several challenges working in the community. While doing assessments and home visits every so often, there were people, instead of welcoming you to the place, were asking right away, what you can give to them, why are you there in the community, and how can you help them. The key is always bringing the social work values that has been inculcated in you, and very important also to establish good rapport with not only the leaders but also the members of the community. Sometimes there were flying chairs inside the house when doing interviews, especially when family members were fighting. So it's a domestic violence. There was even one time when I was hearing gunshots nearby, only to learn that the client's neighbor, that the next house was a drug den, and there was a clearing operation. Now, another crucial thing to consider, or let me say, the first and foremost to consider is your safety. Before going inside the house, make sure you are not at risk for flying objects. More so, it's vital to always check with the barangay leaders the activities happening in the area. I know I wasn't very careful during those times as I was enjoying the thrill of community work, but I have learned my lesson all throughout the years. I'm telling you these encounters not to scare you, but to let you know that not all the things you will experience in the work were heart-touching. Truth is, these encounters can also happen even if you are not a social worker. What's important is you do not lose your social work values and the belief of the capacity for people to change, even if there are rude or uncomfortable encounters. Government and private support. The Department of Social Welfare and Development, the DSWD, is the executive department of the Philippine government responsible for the protection of the social welfare of rights of Filipinos and to promote the social development. Thus, DSWD is the primary government agency mandated to develop, implement, and coordinate social protection and poverty reduction solutions for and with the poor, vulnerable, and disadvantaged. I guess that's why many people perceive that if you're a social worker, you're working for DSWD. But that is not always the case. There are many social workers who worked in private sectors, locally, and even in international setting, such as those working in World Vision, Save the Children, Christian Children's Fund, or even UNICEF. Other social workers are engaged in humanitarian relief that includes natural and man-made disasters. This private support in partnership with our government helps save lives, alleviate suffering, and maintain human dignity. So for my message to those who will pursue the discipline, social work is indeed very demanding and challenging and often emotional, but it's equally a very rewarding career. So, if after my sharing you are still eager to pursue social work, as early as now, I want to congratulate and thank you for choosing one of the most noble professions in the world. I firmly believe that when you grow old, it's going to be fascinating to look back and say, I've done good things in my life. And for those who haven't decided yet but are contemplating on the course, let me ask you these questions. Do you want a challenge, thrill, and adventure while working? Are you a kind of person who, at the end of the day, reflects if you have uplifted a human being? Do you want to make impact and touch people's lives? Are you comfortable working with poor people? Do you want to be trained and skilled in bringing about change to people in need? Are you interested in advocating for marginalized populations, individuals who are overlooked and underrepresented? Do you want to uphold the dignity of the women? Do you want to work for a more equal and just society where human rights are respected and protected? Do you want to help people access their rights as people and citizens? Are you keen on striving to create positive change in individuals' lives and society as a whole? Then, I wish you will consider social work. Who knows, at the first semester in college, you will have the moment of realization and learn to love the social work like I did. Otherwise, good luck to whatever field you're inclined to pursue. Thank you for this opportunity and God bless you all.